Thank you so much. Thank you, Cam. Thank you, everybody. I'm a little nervous, I'll be honest with you. My dad always told me two things about giving speeches. One, never say anything bad about the Jews. And two, tell an interesting story.
All right, so look, this was a very big day concerning Roger Stone. His home in Florida wasn't the only one the FBI searched this morning. Agents also showed up at the Manhattan duplex that he shares with my next guest, Kristen Davis, once testified before Mueller's grand jury. Welcome back to Primetime. Thank you. I know this is not what you want to be doing right now, but you want to support your friend. How concerned are you?
I mean, I'm concerned. They've obviously indicted him already, and he's been arrested. I'm also concerned because I watch CNN all day long, and everyone had an opinion, but nobody really knows Roger personally, and most of their opinions are based on their own agenda. So I think we should put some things in context. And it was the officer that arrested me in 2013, and he said, I've been sent. I don't know anything about this, but I've been sent because you know I treated you kindly in the past, and you have a young child. We want to treat you kindly now.
But didn't you move?
I moved, so there's no joint duplex anymore. So it's I've
so
moved
did they
someplace
search the
else.
right place?
Well, Roger Stone doesn't have a New York apartment anymore, so
they
his stuff
searched
is
your
in
apartment?
storage. No, they searched the remnants of the apartment that we had that's currently being liquidated to storage.
Have you worked out who she is? She's Roger Stone's lover and has his love child. They live together in New York City in an apartment. Okay. Now we've established that. Here is Kristen Davies on the documentary with Matt Damon about the 2008 housing crisis collapse as she talks about her 10,000 clients as a prostitute madam, half of which were Wall Street brokers. Here.
How many customers?
About 10,000 at that point in time.
What fraction were from Wall Street?
Of the
Okay, now you've worked out compromising. What is the dirty trickster's main job, Roger Stone? Is to compromise people, politicians and business people for Israeli intelligence. That's his job. Donald Trump is surrounded by Israeli forces of Russian, Ukrainian and Polish origin. I'm going to establish that Israel is a Russian client state, not a US client state. I'm going to establish that Israel is a backdoor of the old Soviet Union, communism, centralized command and control technocracy based on scientific rationalism, Marxism, which is coming into its own today as scientific rationalism with AI and computing power. Okay, we're going to establish that Israel is a Russian state. It's not American, right? It's been infiltrated for a long time. Let's just get the list. Let's go to the screen. We'll go to the screen. This is the list of prime ministers of Israel. This is just matters that are notorious. These are notorious facts. There's no debating it. Prime ministers of Israel, you ready? We're going to go through every prime minister. Now I want you to guess where they all came from. Most famous, David Ben-Gurion. Remember him? I'm a Bolshevik, 1924. Big Stalin fan. They all are. David Ben-Gurion, blah, 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 blah. His real name is David Grun. All right, where's he from? Where's he from? Let's have a look. David Ben-Gurion was born in Plonsk in Congress, Poland, then part of the Russian Empire. Okay, there's our first Ruski. Nothing against the Russian people. I'm a big fan of the Russian Orthodox Church. Let's move on to the next one. Moshe Sharet. Next one, you ready? Let's see where he was born. Was he born in Palestine, Iraq, Syria? No. Born in Kherson in the Russian Empire, today in Ukraine. He migrated to the Ottoman Palestine as a child in 1906 with his parents. Let's go to the next one. Levi Eshkol. Where's he from? Argentina. Levi Eshkol was born in a shtetl of Oratov Kiev Governorate, the Russian Empire. Ukraine. Ukraine's very popular. Yigal Allon. Okay, Yigal Allon, he was actually just an acting prime minister. He was born in occupied Palestine. His parents came from Poland. Golda Meir. Where's Golda Meir born? Come on, let's take some bets. Golda Mabovich, not Golda Meir, Golda Mabovich was born on May 3rd in Kyiv, in the modern day Ukraine. That's Golda Meir. Yitzhak Rabin. Wasn't a bad guy, this one. Tried his best for peace and paid for it with his life. Where was Yitzhak Rabin born? He was born in Jerusalem. Let's see where his parents are from. Immigrants of the third aliyah, the third wave of Jewish immigration to Palestine from Europe. They were born in a shtetl in southern Pale settlement, present-day Ukraine. His parents were Ukrainian. Menachem Begin, he must have been born in Egypt or Palestine, surely. Menachem Begin was born to Ziv Dov and Hassi Bagan, what was then Brest-Litovsk, today's Belarus, in the Russian Empire. It's in western Russia. Yitzhak Shamir, where's he born? Yitzhak Shamir, the predominantly Jewish village of Rosne, Grodno province in Belarus, western Russia. Boy! Shimon Peres, I swear he was born in Argentina, and then I realized no, he was born in Poland. He was born in West New Poland, now Belarus. Okay, so that's western Russia. Benji, of course, was born in occupied Palestine. His parents were from Poland. His father was from Poland, and his mother was from Poland originally. She was born in the region. Ehud Barak, he was born in a kibbutz in Palestine. His grandparents were from Lithuania in the Russian Empire. Ariel Sharon was born in Palestine. Where are his parents from? They were in the Republic of Georgia, just where Stalin was born. That's where his parents come from, Russia. Ehud Olmert, he was born in Palestine, escaped persecution in the Ukraine and Russia. His parents were from the Ukraine. Okay. So we've now established every single Israeli prime minister was either born in the Ukraine, Poland or Russia, or their parents came from the Ukraine, Poland or Russia. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? And David Ben-Gurion, the first prime minister, is famous for his quotations, "I'm a Bolshevik. Have I got your attention yet?" The quote, "I'm a Bolshevik," comes from an Israeli press article by journalist Tom Segev. Dated March 2013, Segev writes the title, "The USSR is our second homeland," said one Kibbutznik when Stalin died. Incredible as it may seem, Stalin's Soviet Union was once at the centre of Israeli identity. Let us quote extensively as will set the tone for the whole video. Listen carefully. The death notice published in the daily Al-Hamishmah on May 6, 1953 quickly became one of the most cited documents in the history of Israeli politics. The United Workers' Party, it said, was shocked upon hearing of the great disaster that befell the peoples of the Soviet Union. The world's proletariat and all of progressive humanity with the loss of the great leader and illustrious military commander, Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin. The Soviet dictator was described there as a great revolutionary fighter, responsible for immense historic endeavours. But contrary to what is usually remembered, the appellation Son of the Nations, as supporters like to refer to Stalin, did not appear in the paper's announcement. 60 years later, the death notice could be seen on David Seller's Nostalgia website as if it merits only amused wistfulness. In fact, it is of interest to recall, incredible as it may seem, that Stalin's Soviet Union was once at the centre of Israeli identity. In the first Knesset, the left-wing Mapam, or United Workers' Party, was the second largest faction with 19 seats. During the debate over the makeup of the government that was held in the Knesset on March 10, 1949, one of Mapam's two leaders, Yaakov Hassan and Kibbutz Mishma Hamek, said, For us, the Soviet Union is the fortress of world socialism. It is our second homeland, the socialist one. That comment could go down as one of the 10 most quoted sentences in the history of Israeli politics. I was not happy when Hassan voiced that sentiment, wrote Mahir Yahari, Mapan's senior leader, a year later, although he went on to describe the People's Republic of China as a dictatorship that safeguards democracy there, adding, "This is the doctrine we have been nurturing for decades." Juicy. The article goes on. They were not the only ones harbouring such sentiments, of course. David Ben-gurion returned in 1923 from a visit to the Soviet Union and declared, "I am a Bolshevik." Moreover, many of this country's early inhabitants were Russian-born. They spoke Russian, read books and sang songs in Russian, and thought and dreamed in Russian. Many of them owed their lives to the Red Army's war against Nazi Germany. Stalin was considered the father of the victory over Hitler. The communists here had it easier. All they had to do was listen to Radio Moscow. Zionist socialists had a hard time living with the murderousness of the son of the nations and with communist-tainted anti-Semitism. Wrangling over whether to be sympathetic or disapproving split communities and destroyed families. The two great leaders of Mapan wrote a bevy of letters back and forth that were kept for posterity. They are enlightening, and we'll quote a summary of the rest of the article. It seems that Yahari saw in Hassan's criticism of the Soviet Union a betrayal of their friendship. And, for his part, Hassan wrote in a most conciliatory tone, assuring his colleague that, "I am certain the Soviet Union is not a dead planet. I am certain a day will come when there too the sun of true socialist liberty will shine in all its essence. Then the objective historian will come along and explain that what happened during Stalin's era and what is happening there today were stages en route to the future, just as the beheadings of Georges Jacques Danton was also one of the links on the way to victory of the Great French Revolution." Journalist Tom Segev ends the article with this last line. Yahari died in 1987, aged 90. Hassan passed away in 1992 at 93. Plenty of years in which to admit countless times that he had erred in describing the Soviet Union as a second homeland. I gather after the quotes from the above article you will begin to sense where this documentary is heading and are already pondering the ramifications of Israel and the United States being so close. Later, in 1962 in Life magazine, Ben-Gurion is quoted, "The image of the world in 1987 is traced in my imagination. The Cold War would be a thing of the past. Internal pressure of the constantly growing intelligentsia in Russia for more freedom and the pressure of the masses for raising their living standards may lead to a gradual democratization of the Soviet Union. On the other hand, the increasing influence of the workers and farmers and the rising political importance of men of science may transform the United States into a welfare state with a planned economy. Western and Eastern Europe will become a federation of autonomous states having a socialist and democratic regime. With the exception of the USSR as a federated Eurasian state, all other continents will become united in a world alliance at whose disposal will be an international police force. All armies will be abolished and there will be no more wars. In Jerusalem, the United Nations will build a shrine of the prophets to serve the federated union of all continents. This will be the seat of the Supreme Court of mankind to settle all controversies among the federated continents as prophesied by Isaiah." With the above in mind, the emerging close relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, Vladimir Putin of Russia, and Xi Jinping of China becomes more obvious. Understanding the central role of the Belt and Road Initiative to unfolding events, particularly in the Middle East, the Trump administration's main role becomes clearer in facilitating the final establishment of Greater Israel and the transfer of the US high-technology sector to Tel Aviv. This transfer of technology is occurring in the same manner as US heavy industry and manufacturing were moved to China and Asia beginning under the Nixon administration. Interestingly, the same people are involved, most notably Henry Kissinger and the Council on Foreign Relations, along with a bevy of young 20-somethings at the time that included, ironically, Roger Stone and Dr. Steve Pieczenik, players directly involved in bringing Donald Trump to power and keeping him there.
They are very similar in the sense that they're both brilliant, they're both combative, neither one is afraid to take on the media, that they appeal to the forgotten man, the silent majority, the blue-collar white Democrat that was part of the Nixon coalition, is now part of the Trump coalition. Ironically, it was former President Nixon who was, to my mind, the very first person who saw the possibilities of a Trump presidency. He met Donald Trump in George Steinbrenner's box in 1987 at a Yankees game, and the former president called me the next morning and said, "Well, I met your man. He's really got it. This guy could go all the way."
And Donald Trump, like Richard Nixon, cannot wait to hand billions in trade and technology to other countries, especially Israel, who is totally in bed with China. Every time the Don slaps a couple of $100 billion in tariffs and limits trade with China, in steps Israel with stolen US technology, and the trading bloc of Russia, China, Israel and the Belt and Road Initiative draw ever closer. This includes Turkey, who actually makes parts for the Lockheed crown jewel of technology, the F-35, as does Israel. Now they are all drawing closer together thanks to the Trump administration's policy making that clearly benefits Trump's owner, Netanyahu, and the Israeli firstocrat. Pieczenik is of particular interest due to his incredible credentials, membership of the Council of Foreign Relations up until at least 2012, and employment as Deputy Assistant Secretary of State under Henry Kissinger, Cyrus Vance and James Baker. In early 2018, Dr. Steve Pieczenik said this.
What are you seeing here?
Well, I'm glad you feel the storm come, but quite frankly, the storm was over a year ago when we brought in Trump. What you're seeing now is basically the aftermath of a major storm that had occurred, with no one really understanding how Trump came in and how we and the intelligence community and others had helped to bring Trump to the forefront. The storm is over. Hillary is over, Mueller is over, the FBI is over, the CIA, certain elements are over. That's why Pompeo, who was number one at West Point, was put in. We have several military generals in charge. We have every congressional district. We have a military installation or project. So basically, we're not worried about any Democrats or congressmen. If you look at the map of the United States, we in the intelligence and military community are basically in charge, and Trump is on top of that. And I'm not upset about it, and I'll tell you why.
Despite Pieczenik working closely with Alex Jones and Roger Stone, his name is never, ever mentioned in the mainstream media. This must be examined closely. With Trump mirroring Nixon, prone to say one thing and do another, we find Nixon making his name as a red-baiting ally of Senator Joseph McCarthy, but as president, he opened relations with Communist China. Nixon ran for president based on a Southern strategy of appealing to the white devotees of Jim Crow, but his administration backed affirmative action. Nixon made his name as a conservative, but presided over the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency and expansion of the welfare state. And, just like Nixon, the narrative presented in this video contends that Trump will talk a conservative pro-America talk while handing billions in contracts to Israel in a manufactured trade war with China. His aides and associates will talk an anti-communist talk.
China is in control of everything in America, but it's definitely being directed from China, and they plan to kill Trump in March. I thought I would just let people know that Fort Bragg's preparing for that.
Whilst facilitating the rise of Greater Israel in the same manner Nixon facilitated the rise of China. If there is one thing you will easily take from this documentary, is that Israel is a Russian client state, not an American one, and though the levels of control are debatable, Israel has always been a Soviet-era invention and backdoor to the West. Now, why haven't I heard about these Russian Soviet-era spy rings in Israel? No CNN or Alex Jones coverage here. And with Israel playing such a central role in the US high-technology industry, filled with Soviet-era missile and aeronautical engineers, you can bet Elbit Systems, who is building major componentry for Lockheed's crown jewel, the F-35, is not full of alleged Jews from Yemen, Morocco, or Ethiopia. It's full of alleged Jews from Russia. Ask Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, an alleged Jew from Russia who is widely considered a Soviet-era KGB asset by various commentators in Israel. Ask him. He loves the F-35. Even WikiLeaks revealed how close he is to Putin. But don't worry, my US taxpayer friends, I'm sure Lockheed and the US Defense Department considered all these things before handing over the best US taxpayer dollars could design and build to Israel. And Russia. And China. And Iran. And bit to India. You get the picture. No wonder Putin is smiling, as is President of China Xi Jinping and even Rouhani in Iran. Let's keep going on. Here is Donald Trump.
And at the end of this meeting, I think we really came to a lot of good conclusions. A really good conclusion for Israel, something very strong. He's a believer in Israel. He's a fan of Bibi, and really helping him a lot and will help him a lot, which is good for all of us.
On the other hand, the increasing influence of the workers and farmers and the rising political importance of men of science may transform the United States into a welfare state with a planned economy.
Who are we preparing to go to war against or defend ourselves from?
Senator, the Secretary of Defense outlined in the National Defense Strategy the challenges that we face. Part of the emphasis in the strategy was the shift from a focus on terrorism to great power competition, with a particular emphasis on the long-term challenges of China and Russia. It refers to both of those as opportunities for peaceful competition, deterrence, and then the ability to prevail in a conflict should we have to. The strategy is both a classified and unclassified option, but it lays out and goes through the challenges that we face.
So we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars defending ourselves from China, while major corporation after major corporation is shutting down in the United States of America and moving to China. Anything incongruous about that?
On the other hand, the increasing influence of the workers and farmers and the rising political importance of men of science may transform the United States into a welfare state with a planned economy. Incredible as it may seem, Stalin's Soviet Union was once at the center of Israeli identity.
You're an educated sort of a swine. An artist is a bloke who can hold two fundamentally opposing views and still function. Who dreamed that one up?
Scott Fitzgerald.
Well, Fitzgerald knew a thing or two. And I'm definitely functioning. As a good socialist, I'm going where the money is. As a good capitalist, I'm sticking with the revolution because if you can't beat it, spy on it. Don't look like that, George. It's the name of the game these days.
Hi, I'm Jay Rockefeller. I believe more than any time in my memory that we need to bind together, somehow to bind ourselves together through a sense of shared values to reinvest and rebuild our economy and to make life better for everyone. And this isn't just a matter of doing the economy, fixing the banking system. This is a question of making ourselves better as people by reaching outside of ourselves to help other people. Because I think in life, that is what really brings happiness.
Aren't you more of a secular evangelist than a policy consultant, as it were, in the process of national life?
If I have to choose between those two, then you certainly characterize me correctly.
There's not so much of a debate on the left anymore about capitalism, whether we should have it or not. There's a debate about how to have it. I think capitalism is always going to be with us because capitalism represents part of human nature. But the other part of human nature is communitarianism. There's a natural tendency of human beings, in addition to wanting to do things for themselves, they feel a great responsibility and wanting to be part of the community. And so I think the debate for the new generations, instead of capitalism or socialism, is we're going to have both, and then which proportion of each should we have in order to make this all work? It's a much more sensible debate.
In this country, under the First Amendment, words of hate, no matter how odious, are not only tolerated, but protected. But after violent incidents like the Oklahoma City bombing and abortion clinic shootings, some argue that the First Amendment, which was meant to protect dissent, is instead protecting hate.
So is it time then to consider limiting hate rhetoric? Or should we be fighting harder than ever to protect its right to exist? Well, joining us now from Washington, D.C. is Amitai Etzioni. He's an author of The Spirit of Community and professor of sociology at George Washington University. Nadine Strawson, president of the American Civil Liberties Union. And thank you both for being with us this morning. Well, Ms. Strawson, when Americans look at these incidents like Oklahoma City, like what goes on at abortion clinics, I suppose it raises the question of whether or not by protecting free speech as strongly as we do, we're not creating a safe house for hate.
Kevin, it's very important to draw the distinction between protecting somebody's right to say something, including hate-filled messages, and on the other hand, agreeing that that is an appropriate thing to say.
Professor Etzioni, would you suggest that in some way we need to limit speech in this country?
Well, we already do. There are many steps we can take short of changing the law by having policies in place that we all have the same purpose. They will communicate like one person that certain forms of speech which lead to killing very directly are not acceptable.
So it's this idea of subordinating yourself to an inherited system of norms and practices in which you find yourself.
Communitarianism is the inspiration behind one experiment in Birmingham. St. Paul's Community School takes problem children and works with them in small classes.
We create an atmosphere which they describe as a bit like one's own family, where people, of course, are concerned to help each other as people with a long-term interest in each other's lives.
Communitarianism there is undoubtedly benign, though whether St. Paul's is that different from other good schools is a moot point. But across the Atlantic in Wisconsin, communitarianism has been taken much further. It uses not just encouragement, but coercion to stamp out antisocial behavior, and people are beginning to protest.
Let me say, we can't simply destroy everything which a totalitarian government uses.
But using energy as the new metric of value for the post-carbon economy is just one element of the neo-technocratic vision. When Hubbard wrote his technocracy study course, he made it clear that technocracy could not come to fruition without 24/7 surveillance of all energy usage and a continuous stream of data about all goods being produced by and consumed by society. But whereas in the 1930s such a system must have seemed like a delusional flight of fancy, today it is already being implemented.
By now, you may have heard the term Internet of Things.
Sounds interesting, but what does the Internet of Things actually mean? IoT is an evolution of mobile, home, and embedded applications that are being connected to the Internet, integrating greater compute capabilities and using data analytics to extract meaningful information. Billions of devices will be connected to the Internet, and soon, hundreds of billions of devices. As related devices connect with each other, they can become an intelligent system of systems. And when these intelligent devices and systems of systems share data over the cloud and analyze it, they can transform our businesses, our lives, and our world in countless ways.
Why create a smart city? Well, smart cities are more responsive to citizens and they help reduce environmental impact.
They're more cost-effective and they're safer.
Smart cities make people happier and more connected to their community.
Cities are becoming increasingly instrumented. Sensors that enable the capture of all sorts of data are being integrated across city systems, providing critical information on city activity and operations. Sensors on a bridge transmit data on its physical condition. A camera on a freeway relays traffic flow, and digital meters record water and energy usage in real time. Mobile and social channels enable local governments and citizens to communicate with each other, creating yet another source of useful data. Advanced analytics can now readily identify trends and patterns within these massive amounts of data. Information can be integrated, gathered and shared via dashboards, visualizations, and alerts to facilitate understanding and collaboration across systems, agencies, and groups.
This department store in Bundang has introduced a new way to shop. With its smart shopper system, customers pick up a small scanner and tag the items they want to buy. It eliminates the hassle of having to carry heavy items in a shopping basket, not to mention the hassle of having to get them home. After you pay for the items at an automated kiosk, the goods are delivered right to your home.
Before, I had to wait in long lines at the checkout, but now I can use a smart shopper system to pay. It's really quite convenient.
Aside from their convenience to shoppers, the system also helps stores gather data about their customers' shopping habits.
The smart home communicates with the grid and enables consumers to manage their electricity usage. By measuring a home's electricity consumption more frequently through a smart meter, utilities can provide their customer with much better information to manage their electricity bills. Inside the smart home, a home area network, or HAN, connects smart appliances, thermostats, and other electric devices to an energy management system.
With the smart meters, they'll be able to tell exactly what's going on in your home at down to the microsecond, based upon 24/7 communication with all of your appliances, which will also in the future, if this goes through fully and if there's not a public backlash, all of your appliances will need to have a wireless transmitter on them, and they'll need to be, certified under some smart, program. So this means that not only, just stepping aside from one moment to the health issue, this means that not only is your smart meter emitting on average of 13,000 microwave pulses per day, but every one of your appliances is going to be doing the same thing because it will be needed to be communicating with the smart meter itself. So that is a serious concern. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as the privacy issue, just diving right in, the current CIA director, David Petraeus, was quoted as saying, we're going to use smart appliances to spy on you. And it's almost like, and he was later down in the article, and it's very just putting it out there. It's kind of like, it's getting to a point now, James, I'm sure you're seeing this, is like, it's just getting more and more in your face. And it's kind of like this collective force of the controllers, and they're kind of saying, this is what we're going to do, and what are you going to do about it? So they're almost challenging us in a sort of, schoolhouse bully sort of way. What are you going to do about it?
Once again, we are being asked to believe that the vested corporate interests that are rolling these technologies out in a coordinated fashion are doing so for the benefit of the public. That this technology is to help save the Earth. And once again, we are being duped. The technocratic agenda is not about saving the Earth. It is not about helping the public. It is not even about making money. It is about complete control over every aspect of our daily life.
These are truly mad scientists.
They are truly mad scientists.
That's exactly right, John.
And these are
the people that would rule over us, you see. Makes me nervous, doesn't it? Yes. So Christianity's being transformed as well. This is another interesting thing with the concepts of postmodernism, that the church, even the evangelical church, is being rapidly transformed to, so to speak, meet the needs of the postmodern society that we find ourselves in. This was done largely through the efforts of a management consultant starting back in the 80s by the name of Peter Drucker. He actually invented management consulting, the whole field. He was a genius, consulted with every Fortune 1000 company, I'm sure, somewhere along in his life, wrote scores of books. The guy was really a genius in that sense. But he was also an evangelist for a philosophy called communitarianism, which it's a little more complex than this. It's not directly related to communism, but we're pretty doggone close. It basically suggests that people need to succumb to the greater good for the community's sake. We've heard this all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Peter Drucker believed, and he was not a Christian, by the way. He even said, "I am not a Christian." But he believed that society needed a leg on a three-legged stool that would support the religious side of society. So he proposed to bring communitarianism, the philosophy, into the church, the evangelical church, and create a new system of megachurches across the country that could have a societal impact on supporting the New World Order. We saw the rise of megachurches over the last 20 years, like Saddleback Church in Southern California, and so Willow Creek, and back in the east, and other large megachurches around the country have risen up. And essentially, this doctrine has turned these pastors, and many other smaller churches now as well, they've turned these formerly evangelical Christian, biblically based pastors into being community organizers instead. A very subtle change, but a very important change, as they buy into the idea that the way to nirvana, if you will, is to get all the churches in town together to save and heal the community. To do good things together, get together and have a marshmallow roast and sing Kumbaya, whatever. And they've essentially turned these pastors of these churches into community organizers.
Who turned them into community organizers?
This is the doctrine of communitarianism, a la Peter Drucker. This is where it came from. There have been organizations that have been consulting with megachurches for the last 30 years. One big one is an organization called Leadership Network. And they're steeped in this Peter Druckerism philosophy. And essentially, the idea is to build a community in your community. Build a community, not just with your church, but with all the other churches. Let's all get together. Let's get the Episcopalians, and the Catholics, and whatever. Even the Muslims are welcome. Get everybody together and have social projects, and do good community stuff to help the poor and to have some food banks or whatever. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for helping the poor at my discretion. I don't want to be forced to do it by my church, but the idea of a person finding value in serving the greater good is very much a Marxist, communist, socialist idea. That it's not individualism that counts, it's your position in the community that counts, that gives you value. This is the same philosophy we see in technocracy. Your value, the value that you, John B. Wells, for instance, the value that you have is determined by your relationship to the community, not just your individual intrinsic value. this dangerous trend.
What do you see as the biggest challenges in conservation?
The growing human population.
There is a price to carbon in their future.
So should we have policies that penalize people for having extra kids?
It is the only basis upon which we can envision a truly global agreement.